Um,
First item on the agenda, improvement of prior meeting. We have minutes for 5/6, 5/13, 5/12. Motion to approve. Second. Motion second. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous vote. New business. Acknowledge members of the public in attendance. I will acknowledge Mr. O'Neill, legal observer. Sir, thank you. And public comment. Okay. Yeah, let's go into discussion. Can I bring up one thing very quickly? Sure. Yeah. Just because I know this hasn't formally on the agenda, but we just got an email on Friday about this LA-19 form, and there was a commentary that said that we needed to go into any kind of meeting with them. We should do it over the next week, and there's a public hearing. I just wanted to confirm, like, my understanding of make sure of what this is and if there's anything we need to do about it. I suspect the answer is no, but it looks like this is just the state estimating what the total value of all the property in town should be, and estimating that we're about 7% undervalued compared to what we should be.
So that is the equalized value that they run through every year, and that's pretty much what you said.
Okay, and it's pretty much calculated. They're doing this kind of by computer, pretty much.
They do it every year, and they do a period where the towns can comment or question or appeal.
Okay,
so that's where we are.
Okay, I suspect there's probably not much reason for us to do anything.
I don't know of any history that the town has had any issues with it.
Okay. I thought it was okay. Thanks, Mike. Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to give us an overview, and we'll start the discussion of the revaluation process.
Sure. So every year we review the values, and for the first 4 years we do a sales adjustment each year, and then on the 5th year we do what we all tend to call a full revaluation. Actually, that's the state in some places calls it revaluation, some places call it certification, but in any case it's a much more in-depth analysis and adjustments made, and that is the year that we're in. So we are in year 5 of the process. The Department of Revenue assigns essentially an auditor, a manager to work through with us, and Department of Revenue has a theory where they encourage and favor and do everything possible to get cities and towns to hire an outside vendor, appraisal vendor, to work with the town during that 5th-year process. And the theory being that the companies do multiple ones per year. Each individual towns only do one every 5 years. So the companies have more experience doing them, and the companies have more of a global perspective of the whole state. They tend to work throughout the state itself. So they tend to have a little more perspective of the process. The Department of Revenue meets with the various vendors every year to review what their expectations, what DOR's expectations are, and what they expect from the vendors and what they expect from us. And that's a generic meeting. It's not specifically for our town, but they meet with each of the vendors and they say, this is what we want to do and this is what we want you to do with the town. But they don't meet specifically with the vendor about our town. So that is the process that we're in at this point. And so I've given you a sheet, and I could give Peter one after. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were going to be here. a revaluation work plan. This is a preliminary work plan that we file, and then as we move along, we do modify it in more detail. So the first section, certification, just describes what our CAMA system are. CAMA meaning computer assisted mass appraisal. Every city and town has a CAMA system. Ours is from Tyler Technologies for residential, mixed use, commercial, and industrial. And we use real estate research consultants for our personal property. So the software was installed for Tyler in 2020, and from real estate research consultants was done in 2017. Department of Revenue used to require what's called a full field review whenever you change software systems, but they have not done so in the last at least 5 years. So as you see, they did not require one in 2020. And actually that was kind of a unique situation because the system that Needham and many other cities and towns use was actually maintained by the state. And so you'll hear people refer to as state CAMA system. So it was actually run and managed by the state, and the state did the appraisal work for the town, and they just sort of quietly did it. They didn't. There were no contracts, or there was no, no other reviews to be done because the state was doing it themselves. So it's not a new thing that we have outside vendors. The new part is that the state is no longer doing that work for us. We have to
I have a question concerning the outside vendors.
Sure.
When you get the chance.
Well, I'm done with that section, so we could go ahead.
So my life for the past 40 years has been outsourcing and data interchange. So my question would be, in 2020, even though real estate research consultants implemented in 2017, did we integrate with real estate research in 2020, or did we do the upgrade after?
So it looks like they did the conversion to RRC, just real estate research consultant, in 27, and so there's no change. It's actually this RRC has their own software. That's what we use for personal property.
So they will be doing the field. They'll be doing the reevaluation.
So they're working with us for the revaluation. So what I'd like to do is split personal property from residential and mixed-use commercial industrial. Personal property is a lot different. Okay. And that vendor works totally differently than others do because of the nature of the work. So personal property, well, let me back up. Real estate's easy. We know where it is, and it doesn't go anywhere. Like, we can always find it. Okay, it may be different when we get there, but we know where it is. Excise is a little more difficult, but the registry maintains it. You have to keep your plates active, and you have to keep your address active so we can find vehicles more easily. But personal property, you can literally pick it up and put it in your pocket, and so we don't know where it is. So personal property is a more difficult challenge, which is why it helps to have a vendor who does that. So what they do is take a portion of the total number of accounts in personal property, and they do a field visit every year. So with the idea that when we get to that 5th year, we will have visited everybody at least once. Then on the 5th year, we do a more comprehensive review. So they will literally have people walking the street and going into every single business. And if it's an office building, they'll go in the building and they'll knock on every door. Yeah. So they're doing a much more, as I said, comprehensive visits to make sure that we have everybody listed. So that's what they're doing this.
I'm not concerned about the process. I don't think that's going to change. But a good example is what just happened with the water bill. We apparently didn't stress test it, and most people got double billed, triple billed. And so what I'm trying to ask is, have we gone through with the vendor that we will be using have we gone through data interchange and testing for the upcoming revaluation in the past? Is this the one we used last time,
So,
or has it not been selected?
so RRC has been used before. We have just put out the RFPs for the residential commercial. We had one respondent, Tyler Technology, and we are reviewing that. The contract hasn't been awarded, but we're reviewing.
But we haven't used them in the past.
We
Tyler
have,
Technology.
we've used the system, we are using the software, so there is no conversion because we're already using the software.
That's really what I mean.
Okay,
And how many other communities does Tyler Tech?
thousands, literally thousands. Yeah,
All over the country.
all over the country, and they're within Massachusetts. Virtually everybody, every city and town that was on the state system is now on the Tyler system. So what happened when they converted from the state, the state group went out and entertained proposals from various companies, and they selected Tyler as the one that they would facilitate the conversion for. So at that point, towns had a choice to either go with Tyler or choose their own vendors separately. So Needham went with Tyler as well.
The safe choice.
Well, it was being managed by the state, and the conversion and everything was handled separately. It wasn't something that had to be done locally. So in the next section, program components, you will see the various tasks that need to be done on the left: partial field review, full field review, data collection, data quality study, evaluation, and evaluation field. So those list what will be done in-house and what the contractor will do. So we will be doing partial field review and data collection, and the vendor that we end up selecting would do the full field review, data quality study, evaluation, and evaluation field review. And I need to emphasize that we internally are supervising all this, and we are giving the final decision on it. So they're not making decisions for us. They are working through and making recommendations, and they're deciding what to do with that.
So a quick quality question. They are going to see every single house.
That would be a full field review, which we don't anticipate doing. So there's a data quality study that's done. And so what is done with the data quality is to select a percentage of properties and visit those in the field.
So they will visit those.
Yes.
And then how do we handle the data quality on those samplings that they did? How do we handle that internally?
Well, the data quality study is to tell us what the essentially the confidence level in what we have. So we are always maintaining the data. So we believe it to be accurate. So when you do the data quality study, you say the assumption is accuracy. Let's see how accurate it is. So we take a percentage of them and then go out and field review them and compare. And so then there's a statistical analysis done on that to say of the information we have and of what we observed, what percentage, if you want to use the simplest term, what percentage is accurate. Right. And so we have to hit a certain level.
So we get the final view of the sampling that they do.
Correct.
And we'll check.
Yep.
Another question, and we've touched on this in the past, which is we understand that on many properties in this town, could be as much as 25 to 30% of the properties, the land value needs to be raised. The land values, we understand that on smaller lots in this town, the value of the property in totality is so skewed towards the value of the land. It's the piece of dirt that's on a 10,000 square foot lot that is the value, and that the building in and of itself is not of value. So so to save, obviously the reality is we don't need to go in and look at every house. Okay, if we know that a small lot and is 90% is the value of that land, that's really the key. I mean, how do they do that? I mean, I know Needham is different than other towns. You said that they do thousands all over the country. How do they reconcile that in Needham? Because it would seem to me that it's not as efficient if they're going into homes on small lots that, you know, we know are, you know, number one, have a very low value. It's the land. So how does that?
But you still do have the value of the house, so if the land before it's torn down is $1.2 million, you still have a house on it that's worth 400,000, but the totality of the house and the land does not equal 1/6.
Right. Okay.
But
So
I don't think that I don't believe
Well,
this house is worth 400,000.
No, if you have a Maserati parked on that property,
That's a lot of value, but that's
But-
taxed through personal.
no, but my point is, there is a value to that house, a utility value.
correct.
Okay, so how do they account for that utility value?
okay, so there's a bunch of stuff just said, so let's sift through it all. So first of all, no, that's okay. They're all valid questions, all make sense. So let me first clarify that the folks from Tyler that will be working in Needham are people that have Massachusetts experience. They're not from, you know, Colorado or something. The proposed folks that they have listed in their RFP, one of them is a former assessor in another town in Massachusetts. Another one has done a lot of work in he has also worked in a couple of different towns as an assessor. They've got a lot of real practical knowledge as well as Massachusetts knowledge. So it's not as if we have to teach them, they really do know. That's why we're hiring, because they know. Okay, and appraisers, as I'm sure you all know, are licensed and have continuing education and so forth, so they really do know their business as far as that goes. Okay, so then the land values, that's one of the things that we have been directed by the Department of Revenue to review is land values. So in any, I'm going to generalize, in any of the Boston suburbs, we have a similar situation where there's only so much land, and if you want to build a house, there's really not much empty lot available that you can just go pick an empty lot and buy it and build your house. So you're going to buy something and knock it down. So the value of land is generally calculated with a combination of empty lots that are sold and there's a process that we use with any particular sale to extract the building value and separate it from the sale to arrive at a land value. So there are various methods to calculate land, and these are all industry standard, you know, things that that any appraiser knows how to do, and that the state has directed us to do. So in a town like Needham, for instance, where you see someone purchase, and we use round numbers, purchase, my favorite description, the 1970s raised ranch, and they buy it for $1 million, and then they knock it down. Well, what's the value of the land at that point? The one way to look at it is to say that if you paid $1 million for a property that had a house, and then you knocked the house down, then the house had no value to you. And in fact, the cost of the permits and the labor and the ancillary, you know, getting the police details out there to direct traffic and so forth, the cost of the demolition is actually part of the land price. So if it's $1 million for the land and another, or rather the property with the house, and another $25,000 to knock it down, then it's really $1,025,000 for that land before somebody can go ahead and build. So the land value should reflect that. And our land values don't. Our land values are more traditional. On a $1 million property, you might see a $500,000 lot value and a $500,000 building value. Again, all examples that are not, we're not talking about specific property. So we need to adjust that land value. So now on the 70s raised ranch, what is the cost? What is the value of that building? It's probably, if it sells if it's not being sold, it's probably closer to 900 to $1 million for the land and maybe 100,000 for the house, because the house really doesn't have a lot of value at that point. It has some utility.
Which is, I'm fine with that, but it shouldn't be valued at what it sounds as though we might be doing inadvertently, which is almost like replacement value. And that, so clearly the values need to change.
So
I'll give you a quick example. So now, and I'm one of the few realtors that actually do this, I will put on MLS the house, let's just say for $1 million, as a general single residence. I also put it on as land in MLS at $1 million. So I'm advertising it as land, right, and a single family.
Yes.
So the real value is the $1 million for land. And that can all be qualified and qualified.
Well, as I said, there are methods to land valuing, and that's, we know how to do it, and the contractors know how to do it, and the Department of Revenue knows how to do it. We all know how to do it. So yes. And so what we're really doing here, and I want to emphasize this for property owners, that when we're talking about increasing the land value, we're increasing it all throughout the town, not one specific group. So,
well, you do have neighborhoods.
Correct, but my point is that anybody hearing this would say, well, wait a minute, my taxes are going to go up. No, because we're adjusting the value throughout the town, which equalizes, which doesn't change the tax bill itself. It's not to say individuals won't have some adjustments, but it's not a case of land values are going to go from 500 to $1 million, so my taxes are going to double. Not at all. That's not what's happening. So we value property through the whole town, and it's kind of a common misconception about what we do. But people tend to think, well, property values are going up, therefore my tax is going to go up. And it's not at all how this works. So we do values, and we do the values all year long. The finance folks do the town budget. We end up at the end of the year with a levy. This is how much we have to collect to run the town. That's what the finance people come up with. We come up with the total value. So you divide one into another, you get a tax rate. So if the values go up, the tax rate goes down proportionally because we're collecting the levy. We're solving for that.
Go up more than 2. What I'm hearing?
No, the levy can't go up to the.
Yeah, but the new growth is tied in with the data. Right?
Okay, hold on. All right, so we don't want to get too far afield. There are Proposition 2.5 has rules on the levy, not on values, on the levy. And Proposition 2.5 does not affect the actual tax bill. It affects the levy. And there are things that go into that. So, as you said, new growth is part of it. There's a whole calculation. I have a really nice document called a primer on Proposition 2.5 that I think I've given you.
You gave it to us.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I'm asking these questions, because some of them don't really sync up.
Well, if we look at it this way, if you just say the town's going to arrive at a levy, however that is done, that's also audited. All our work is audited by the state every year. All the finance work is audited as well. So to get to that levy point, that means the Department of Revenue has reviewed all that stuff and they've approved that number. So once that number's arrived at, while that work's being done, our value work is being done. And so they're going to approve our values as well. When we get to a certain point when DOR says, okay, you've followed the law, you've done the process that we expect you to do, and you've done it accurately, therefore your values are correct. So that's where we get. So when we get to that point where the values are certified and the levy is certified, divide 1 and 2 there where you get the tax rate. So if given a particular levy in a particular year, if the values change, the tax rate's going to change proportionally because we're solving for that levy. It's always value times rate equals the levy. So value goes up, rate goes down. Value goes down, rate goes up, because we're still solving for that number. So when we say we're going to adjust land value, okay, that means this is gonna go up, but the rate's gonna go down
The rate's gonna
proportionally,
go down.
because we're still hitting the same levy number.
Okay.
So it's not a case of, oh no, our land values are going up, so our bills are gonna go up. They're not connected that way.
So the land value, because I'm looking further down the road, when somebody gets their tax bill, the land value could reflect an increase, including their house that is maybe a tear down. And they're gonna come in and say, I'm not valued at this, but then we have to go through the whole explanation, well, your taxes really didn't go up, blah, 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 blah.
Right. Yeah, there'll be some.
It just seems like the public, based on this 5th year, may need an explanation.
And the change that Mass Department of Revenue is
Yeah.
putting forth to us, that the land values have to be increased. And I think that all of us, when we get our tax bills every year, have always looked and been like, oh, that's really low, and no, my house isn't worth that. So,
Right.
And we understand that, and I think other people will too, and I think when we get to that point, we will, we'll obviously have a broader public discussion. But Melissa, I want to go back to one of the reasons why I asked the question the way I did, which is that, is this, do they take a statistical sampling of properties that they then go take a look at a view? Because my feeling is this, is if we have 25% or 30% of the properties in this town that are whatever we deem to be small lots, we know that 90% of the value of those properties is land. It's the piece of dirt. We know that. So why employ the people power to go out and actually inspect houses when they don't need to? Because if a house is valued at 100,000 and the land is worth 900,000 in the example that we've been throwing around, why is it that, how much time do we need to spend looking at houses that only have a value of $100,000? It would seem to me that
it's not our choice, it's a state.
I understand that. I just want to understand, is that this is statistical sampling that the computer system says, spits out the list of properties, these are the properties that need to be looked at? Or is there any discretion that we have?
We shouldn't have any discretion. We should, it should be.
I think
like a lot of.
I think to some degree, yes, but you want to make sure that the properties, let's say, in the mid-range, not the 25% smaller, and not the 25, but the ones, the 50% in the middle, maybe they should be, that's where they should be looked at more, because there's the house value. Land value, we know. We're going to arrive at land values. I'm just asking the question to understand how we do this and to employ as efficient a system as possible that produces the most equitable result.
So again, all good questions, thank you. So I'm giving you the really short version of what we do. It's a lot more in depth than
Fair enough.
we can describe here.
Yeah.
So there are different parts of this analysis that we do. So first of all, we are asked by the state to visit, let me clarify, to attempt a visit, an inspection of each property every 10 years. So one of the things we have to show the state this time is, here's how many we've done. Have we done the right percentage? And generally you think, well, if every 10 years, if you do 10% of them, you'll get there. So that's generally how it works. In Needham, there's so much activity with new construction and demolitions and rehabs that we don't really have too much trouble inspecting, because we're out there. We go out on any building permit that affects value. We go out on any new construction, any major rehab, any sale. So and there's a lot of sales turnover. So we're visiting properties for those reasons. So we're out there very well. So the goal is to get the data as accurate as possible. If you have 4 bedrooms, we want to know that we have 4 bedrooms listed and 5 bathrooms or whatever you have. So it's our job to do that, and we love doing it, and that's what we wanna do, we want it to be accurate, so we will visit these
My
properties
question is,
every week.
like, efficiency, understanding, this is why we're having this discussion.
Sure, and part of what we're doing this year, part of this reevaluation is to demonstrate through statistical means that we are doing what we're supposed to do. So one of the ways is that the Department of Revenue representative will do a random selection. She will grab ones and say, I'm gonna look at these, let me see all the records for those. And then she will inspect them. And so there's a sampling that she will do. There's a sampling that we do, the data quality study is a different type of work, but it's a similar concept that we're gonna take a sample and verify that sample, and we're gonna draw conclusions over that analysis. And these are all things that we do. The result of these things hopefully will be, yes, we're right on the money, we're doing what we're supposed to do. If something shows that it needs work, then that's something we would focus on. Typically, we would focus in a future year and say, you know, we're gonna look at X, whatever it is.
Well, what this is likely to pick up, or possibly likely to pick up, is looking at physically viewing homes that have possibly done additions or other major improvements that weren't permitted that would be picked up as part of this process.
Yeah, not unusual, again, yes, that's a different ball.
But that would then be, the valuations would be adjusted based upon what the inspection shows.
And those people in Needham do follow the rules and get their permits as they're supposed to, and that's how we track it. So we monitor all the building permits that are taken out. We don't inspect every single one because some don't relate to value, but we do monitor them all, and we do go out. And you know, when we're out, there are almost 11,000 properties, but believe it or not, when you do this for not that long a time, you can drive down the street and say, oh, wait a minute, I don't remember that. And, you know, you can look at things like that. So there are times that we're out inspecting, you know, house A, and we notice house B draws our attention for some reason, and we can go ahead and look at it. So it's really not typical that we miss things, but we do. I mean, that's the nature of the business. That's part of what it is. There's so many details, so many properties, it's impossible to get every single one every single time. But that's what the data quality study tells us. How accurate are we, and what are we doing? Do we need to focus some other place?
Well, obviously, if this was a perfect system, we wouldn't have a need. We wouldn't have brokers.
Yeah,
we wouldn't have brokers. We wouldn't have negotiations.
Yes.
We would put the price, and that would be the price.
And
Obviously, I always think of it as it's a range of reasonableness, and you want to be as close to the center of the range of reasonableness. But there's always going to be some give and take to that. Obviously, some values will just be kind of outrageously wrong.
well, and that's what the analysis that we do. A lot of I keep saying this phrase, statistical analysis, because that's the basis of how we do it. So we take samples and then we analyze the samples and then project out from the samples.
About of the, let's say, 8,400 or so single-family homes. I know they're duplexes and other things, but about how many would be included in the statistical sample?
It's a percentage based on various. It's not just one sample. We do multiple analyses. So and typically we're doing it based on age of the house, the style of the house, the location, and the price range. So we have different analyses that we do, and we repeatedly do them to make sure. So if you have, for instance, I'll go back to my favorite 1970s race ranch. So the 70s, that's going to put it in one analysis with all 70s houses. Then the race ranch style is going to put it in a different analysis with all race ranches. So that'll be the one that was made in 1970 and the one that was made in 1990 and beyond. And then the so age, style, the value of it will also be. So there are some that fall into a lower range, or some that fall into a higher range. They'll be analyzed separately. The properties in a specific neighborhood, they will all be analyzed together regardless of the age of the son, because they're in the same location. So after we've done multiple passes at these different analyses, they all should fall into place. And so we not only have acceptable ranges for each analysis, but then we have an acceptable range for the total analysis to make sure that there's no variation between the different ranges. It's a really, as you all know because you're involved in it, but the amount of work and detail that we do is, most people have no idea what we're doing to get to these numbers. And it's always interesting for me to have discussions with homeowners to explain to them how we do it and to sort of see their eyes light up like, wow, I didn't realize you did all that. So
I'd like to, if everyone's okay, table this conversation and let's move into executive session. We do have some abatement applications to deal with. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to comply with provisions of any general or special law, specifically discuss real estate and personal property exemption and or abatement applications which are not open to public inspection, or to comply with the provisions of any general or special law, specifically discuss returns of property held for charitable purposes which are not open to public inspection, or to discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the government's litigating position. The purpose of the executive session today is to deal with abatement requests. So, do I have such a motion?
So moved. Second.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
and I believe we need a roll call vote.
We just did. Oh, I did. Mike died. Mike. Dean,
Aye.
and myself.
Okay.
Yeah, they just like.
Okay, so they do it so fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we're going
Wait,
to stop the recording and close the public Zoom as soon as I get the right mouse.
Peter, all